Good morning, everyone. All right, so my name is Anita Lettink. I worked for an HR and payroll company for close to 20 years. Led a payroll service center, so I feel you. And we were just talking during the break. If payroll goes well, you don't hear a thing. But the moment you make a mistake, all hell breaks loose, right? And all your credibility has, left the building, more or less. It is not an easy job to be in payroll. And so what I want to talk to you about today is, it is not just payroll that we need to think about. We're doing payroll because people work. And the world of work is changing super fast at the moment, and it even looks like it's changing faster and faster every year. And so what does that mean for payroll and for us as payroll professionals? But maybe even more important, what does it mean for the people we pay? Because a lot is happening there as well. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what is going on the employee side before I move into what is then really happening in payroll and what do I see in the future of payroll. Because who is your future employee? Often when we think about how we deliver HR and payroll, we don't realize that the changes we make affect our future employees much more than the employees we have today, for the simple reason that it takes time to implement those changes. And what do these people want? Well, I mentioned that I worked in payroll for a very long time and also led payroll service centers and teams. And to me, the delivery of a payslip and then all the accompanying reports was the end of the process, right? So it's the end of the month, everything is done, delivered to the authorities, to finance, payslips to employees, money in the bank, and then the new period starts, whether it's monthly or bi-weekly or whatever. But for an employee, a payslip is just the beginning. It's the beginning of their financial process. It's how they pay their bills. It's how they plan for the future. And it's how they keep their family in clothes and in foods, pay for college funds and all of that. And once I started to look back, I wrote a payroll book 2 years ago, and so I did a lot of thinking about this topic. I realized that during my career, perhaps what I had overlooked was this employee side of the business. And I needed to pay more attention in my writing and in my presentations, like today, to these employees, because this is why we do it. And employees are changing very quickly. And I know that a lot of you see these posts about this is what Gen Z wants, and this is what millennial wants, and this is what the baby boomer wants. Spoiler alert, I don't believe in any of it. I just don't think that that is the right way to look at groups of people. Because people are flexible these days. They look at flexibility as something that is normal. So this flexibility goes towards their career choices, but also about when they work, how they work, where they work, and what they envision their work to be. And there's a logical reason for that, and it's called the pandemic. Everyone in the world had a reset the moment we were all in this pandemic together. And I don't know if that will peter off over the next couple of years, but everyone was faced with their mortality. Life is not a given. And something unexpected can happen, and it can happen to you without no reason or no fault of your own. So people are making different choices. And when they are able to, this life-work balance has become much more important. And I know it's different for people who have the lowest incomes compared to people who probably earn a little bit more. But flexibility is like a red thread to everything that we see happening in employee populations. and forget everything you learned about generations, because some people have their first child in their 20s, others in their 30s, half of the population, some in the 50s and in the 60s, not women, of course, but we don't know what people's choices are. And so policies should much more be focused on life events instead of assumptions around age. Second trend, transparency. I see that especially with younger people. They have grown up with the internet at their fingertips, and everything is just a search away. And the interesting thing is that they find that completely normal. I have a niece and a nephew, they're 23, 21. They are on their phones all day. Anyone has kids in that age, or probably younger? The phone is like an extension of their hand, right? And if you don't know something, you look it up. And that also goes for working conditions, salaries, and benefits. In my corporate life, it was not done to talk about your salary and benefits. They look at that completely differently. It's like, why shouldn't I know what my colleague earns? Why shouldn't I know what everyone gets here in benefits? And I'll talk about pay transparency in a little bit more. But everything is just a question away, and corporate boundaries don't matter to them. If they think they know someone who has the answer, they will reach out and get the answer. Completely different to how I grew up in the corporate world. They also probably don't have one income stream. We see more and more people who fund their living conditions in different ways. And especially for younger generations, there's a simple reason for that. Their parents, many of their parents, lost their jobs during the financial crisis. That was experience number one. It did not matter if they had permanent jobs or long-standing contracts. As soon as company results are not what they need to be, then people can get let go. Now, they get some money, but a permanent contract is not a guarantee for permanent life employment. Then the pandemic happened. And I know later on in the pandemic, a lot of government programs kicked in, but we often forget that during the first 6 months of the pandemic, lots of people got fired. These were all, especially the younger people, these were all students at the time. They worked in bars, restaurants, in cinemas, in supermarkets, and a lot of those places shut down, and they lost their jobs. So that was the second learning, that a permanent job is no guarantee for employment. And what do? Then you start to think about, how can I diversify my income streams so that when I lose one job, I still have something on the side that provides me with an income. And what you see happening is that more and more people take a permanent corporate job for 3 days a week to cover their expenses, like a mortgage and insurance and a car payment. And on the other days, they are starting to build something for themselves. So entrepreneurship, in whatever form, as a social media influencer, or as someone who has a shop on Etsy, or writing books and selling them on Amazon, people can just set up these shops to customers all over the world with just a credit card. It doesn't cost a lot, maybe a few $100s a year, to run your own global business. Will they all become millionaires? Oh, of course not. But that is not what they're looking for. They're just looking for money to cover their expenses and do something nice. And then finally, people are instantly connected everywhere. I mentioned earlier, every answer is just a search away. But almost everything that you can buy is also a click away. And I don't know if you have that here, but in Amsterdam, where I live close to, we have these, what they call dark shops. And if you use your app, you can just order some groceries that you forgot, and they will deliver that to you in 10 minutes. Or if you want to buy a book or something else, you go to Amazon and they deliver it the next day. Everything is available instantly. You click, you buy, it gets delivered. Even if you want to book a flight or something or go on vacation. You can buy it because we are instantly connected through our phones. So with all of that, flexibility, transparency, multi-job incomes, and instantly connected, do we have a future-proof payroll service that supports these people with these expectations that they have? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 major trends that I see happening around payroll and around payroll technology, and explain to you where that is headed. So what is new? Well, you heard this morning Eric talk about the cloud and the movement of payroll to the cloud. And I'm not going to talk about, let's say, the most obvious reasons, like infrastructure, cost, functionality, and legislation. But what I'm going to talk to you about is my feeling around, or my perception of the cloud really is sharing. This is the central topic of the cloud. Because let me ask you a question. Who here woke up one day as a child and thought, I'm going to be a payroll professional? Raise your hand. Yeah, no one. That is telling, right? That means that we all got into payroll through a different route, right? So who here was in finance before they got into payroll? Yes. Who here was in IT before they got into payroll? Yeah. What else did we do before we got into payroll? Shout something at me. Administration? Something else? Operations? Yeah, so, sorry. I was an engineer. I worked at a networking company. Well, at the time, we did not have wireless, so I pulled all those cables and routers and making sure that everyone in a building was able to work. And then the company, the HR and payroll company I worked for, needed someone who was very knowledgeable in internet architecture and all that. And that is how I got into payroll. Well, 20 years later, I know everything, well, not everything, but I know a lot about payroll. And I think this is what is happening for a lot of us. And there is a little bit of a problem with that, because that also means that most of payroll professionals are over 45. I did a keynote a couple of weeks ago here in the UK, and that company had done a little survey among their customers, and they had found that 75% of the payroll professionals within their customer base was over 45. Now think about what that means. That means that in the near future, we will not be able to attract payroll professionals to come work for our companies. And that means that going forward, we will rely more and more on companies such as Cintra to provide us not only with the infrastructure to run payroll, but also with the services to deliver it to our people. Payroll professionals will work more and more for these payroll companies, also because that they offer them careers and good outlooks. And that is where all these companies are building their services catalogs for. So that is one. The second is, I showed this slide to a couple of people. They had no idea what this was, but I think you all know what this is, right? What is it? It's the payroll calendar. Of course we know what it is. So on the first, you open it up, you do data entry for about 2 weeks. It's a monthly calendar, obviously. Then somewhere around the 15th, you close it for calculations and all kinds of stuff that goes on in the back. around the 27th or the 28th, you start paying it, people, you do some reporting, and then by the 31st, you're done, and the whole thing starts over, and sometimes it's 2 weeks, and then you have to work really hard because everyone on a weekly or bi-weekly schedule, I salute you. That is not easy. This is where we are headed, and the cloud makes it so that we can do this. And that means between the 1st and the 27th, we can do data entry because there's a continuous calculation engine in the back. So the moment that you enter your data, the engine already calculates what it should be. And that means that at every moment of the month, it does not matter when, you are ready to pay. Now, of course, we all will keep the monthly calendar, I hope. But this is what the cloud allows. And think about what I just said about payroll professionals. This also helps, because if you can continuously run this in the back and your closing period is a lot shorter than what it was, that also means that the work that payroll professionals do is a little bit more manageable than it is sometimes today. The third thing is API, application programming interfaces. Think of this as integrations. When I talked about the need to be, or the wish, or the opportunity, possibility to be connected everywhere, I talked about consumer applications. But your employees now have expectations toward corporate systems as well. They don't think, well, this is what I do in my private life, so here I want to be connected all the time. And when it comes to the solutions of my employer, okay, it's fine that I can only use those between 9 and 5. It does not work that way in their heads, right? They are instantly connected everywhere. They have an answer for all their questions at their fingertips. And that means they have the same expectations towards being paid. An API is nothing more than a sort of standardized transaction. This morning, when I got dressed, I looked outside, I saw it was raining, I picked up my iPhone, I typed in Newcastle in my weather app, and immediately I could see what the weather looked like and when it would stop raining. It didn't, by the way. That is what an application, what an API does. So my browser on my phone, or my app on my phone, send an API request to some server somewhere on the internet that knew that I was asking the weather for Newcastle and sent me back, okay, today it's going to be 20 degrees, it's going to rain between the hours of 9 and 10, and also in the afternoon, sorry about that. But anyways, all these types of standardized requests can be answered in a split second, and we are totally used to doing that. This has also changed our expectations. So how can you apply that in payroll? Think about earned wage access, for instance. Does anyone use earned wage access here? No? Okay. Earned wage access, becoming very popular everywhere, is a way of requesting some of your some of your money, some of your salary, before payday. And so, for instance, think about the possibility that my fridge breaks down, I don't have any savings, so now I really would like to take out some of the money that I've already earned. So what you can do as an employee, if your boss or your employer offers earned wage access, you go to the app, you send a request to the payroll company, how much have I already earned this month and how much can I take out? And then that payroll company responds and says, you've already earned, let's say, £500, and today you can take out 200. And so then you can say, okay, let's do that. Or you say, well, that's not enough, so I have to wait a little longer and withdraw the full funds for that fridge. So I don't know what you do in the meantime, but okay. This API service is going to become much more pervasive in payroll for all kinds of applications. And this was an example from the employee side, but this is also helpful for payroll professionals, because I don't know how that works in the UK. I'm going to apologize, but in the Netherlands, if you want to apply for a mortgage, you have to go to your employer. They need to fill out a form, and then once the form is filled out, you can send that to your mortgage provider, and they might approve your loan. Well, filling out the form is typically, like, it takes 2 weeks or so, so it adds to the process. Now, think about what could happen if I, as an employee, give access to my mortgage provider for just this one check, and the mortgage provider checks it right away with the payroll vendor, and then knows immediately if I'm approved or if that employee is approved or not. That would take a lot of work away from payroll professionals, at least in the Netherlands, that now spend 2 weeks on filling out this form. Well, they probably don't spend 2 weeks, but they need 2 weeks. So all these little things that you can then automatically complete through APIs add up. Once again, as payroll professionals, we need that because there aren't a lot of us anymore. New legislation. This morning, we already heard about everything that's going on here in the UK, but more than 70 countries go to the polls this year, and that covers 44% of the world population, which means that a lot of new legislation is coming our way, because that's what new governments typically do. And one of the most important ones that is coming our way is the European Pay Transparency Directive. This is the equal pay for equal work. And I know that you already do a gender pay gap reporting here in the UK, but this one is much more extensive. This has to do with providing people information about their future pay before they even apply. For instance, salary bands in ads or during a conversation. It provides, employees have the right to know where they sit in the salary scale, and not on a personal level, but on averages and means. And ultimately, companies with employees in the European Union will have to report on the gender pay gap, both on salary and on compensation. And that gender pay gap has to be less than 5%. And if it's over 5%, that triggers an immediate remediation with the unions or with the works councils. I also wrote a book about this topic last year because I noticed that the law had been accepted and no one was talking about it. But if you need to do this, and you already know that, that's a lot of work, especially with the 5% threshold. And so companies in Europe will have to really start thinking about this, working on this, because, as you can see, enforcement and reparation are part of the bill, which means that on the national level, there is an enforcement institute, and if you consistently go over the 5% threshold, you can be fined. And fines in the European Union are typically not low, I can tell you that. They are typically percentages of revenue. All right, and then the last trend. So what about automation and AI? We're finally going to talk about that. So generative AI in the UK. This is a recent study. I've put the link at the bottom so that you can see it. But 36% of people here in the UK have used generative AI. That's a pretty good number. And 7 million have used it at work. And that means that people are getting more and more familiar with AI. But the interesting thing is, AI is not new. We've been using AI in HR, in hiring, for at least 10 years or so. everyone who's on social media only gets posts in their timeline that have been selected by an algorithm. So AI is not new. But generative AI was the first time that people, you and me, actually could go to a site and use it as a separate technology. And because it was so good, and it so far exceeded our expectations, there was this immediate surge of everything is now generative AI across the world. 74% of people who've used it claim that it boosts their productivity. I use it a lot, especially if I have to come up with a title for a blog, which I'm not good at writing short titles. I just go online and I ask for, a nice title. But that also means that payroll has to be much more automated than it is today. This is a survey from HR.com that I was involved in as a member of the committee. And we saw that there are lots of administrative payroll function, but they are only automated to a very low degree, a little bit over 30%, where strategic payroll functions are closer up to 60%. So these functions can take much more advantage of new technologies like generative AI than administrative payroll functions that are not as automated. And so when we talk about automation and AI, we often think about dashboards, and you saw a little of that earlier in the presentations. But what is super interesting is things like anomaly detection. What you can do there is you have AI running in the background, and it will constantly scan what you are doing. And what it will tell you is when it finds, for instance, you've just entered a new hire, and you've filled in the payroll details, some benefits, but you forgot one. And it happens. What anomaly detection will tell you is, hey, you just hired this person, they have this role, and what we see is that all the other workers for this role have this benefit, but this one hasn't. Is that a mistake? Was that on purpose? And how can you now correct it? So you will also be training the AI that runs in the back, what are good choices and what are bad choices. I see a lot of potential for anomaly detection. And then there's lots of AI-powered assistants like chatbots and everything that comes with that. I've given you a number of examples for AI in payroll just because I know there are not a lot of examples online, and so you might not know about them. Data loading, for instance, the moment that you're scanning forms or accepting new entries, it will tell you if it's right or if it's wrong, and it will suggest corrections that you can then accept or not, and it will learn from that. Lots of compliance monitoring, anomaly detections. And so I would strongly urge you that when you think about generative AI in payroll, think about back office optimization, think about security and compliance, and leave all the chatbots for what they are. That might be helpful to some extent, but if you currently already have chatbots, leave them. And I will also tell you why. This is why. AI never says, I don't know. And in exchanges with employees, that is extremely dangerous because generative AI bots try to please you as the person who's asking the question. And so it will always come up with a question, good or bad. And an employee does not have the knowledge to understand that, yes, this is an answer, but it's the wrong answer. They will not be able to distinguish between that. And so chatbots, generative chatbots, a little bit iffy at the moment. They will get better, but focus on back office use of generative AI first, because you will still be there. And you will be able to train AI instances, and you will be able to tell, yes, this is right, no, this is wrong, and it will learn from that. This is a picture that I asked it to make about a benefits administrator. Look at the lettering. Every word in there is wrong, which I find really reassuring, I have to say. AI in service centers do have their place, because what we saw during some investigations, during some research, is that it was especially helpful to get junior people up to speed quickly. And there was almost no change in productivity for experienced workers. Interesting, huh? So, for AI, be the human in the center. You are in control. You're its boss or its manager, leader. Invite AI to everything and treat it as a junior staffer. It has to learn, just as any other junior staffer. And keep in mind that this is the worst AI you will ever use. From here on, it will only get better and better. So, my call to action is always, what is the problem you are trying to solve? Don't introduce new technology because it's there. It needs to be helpful. It needs to address issues that you have. Especially ask your vendor, because as we sit here, we won't have enough data. We don't have enough information to train our own AI. So we will rely on payroll vendors as Cintra to do that for us. We tend to overestimate how much technology changes our lives in the short term, and we underestimate how much it changes our lives in the long term. Just think about your iPhone. When it first came out, it could do 3 things: call, take pictures, and you could listen to music. And now, it is that I need my passport. Otherwise, I would have flown here only with my phone. I pay with my phone, plane ticket is on my phone, open my hotel door with my phone, email, call, everything. The future of payroll is going to be much more strategic than it is today. So think about your administrative duties. Think about how you can solve them through technology, through the solutions that you are using. Employees and data are critical to be in the center. Remember, the payslip is just the beginning. People have different needs, and a lot of that is based on data and how easy we can move the data back and forth and integrate it with others. And that means that we will need to use technology as our key enabler. And if we do that, I'm pretty sure that we will have a super attractive role and function in the future. And I really wish you good luck in the next couple of years as you work towards establishing the future of payroll. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Anita.
You're welcome.
Very interesting, fascinating. As Anita said, there are lots and lots of different things going on: employees, technology, companies looking for data in a different way. But we completely agree the data is going to be the way the data is manipulated, the way the data is handled, the way the data is used to connect different things in ways that perhaps we can't imagine now, is going to be really powerful. And payroll, that's the really good news. Payroll is the truth. Payroll is the source of truth about employees, their earning potential, what they've earned in the past, what they're earning now, their net, their gross. Payroll's not going to go away because it's the most efficient form of tax collection known to mankind. Okay?
Which is true.
It's immediate tax collected with certainty, dictated by software. It's incredibly efficient. So it's not going to go away, but it will change. What we've got now is a panel discussion about emerging trends in payroll, which is going to be led by my colleague Tom and the guests. Thank you very much.